Like I said, let me be crystal clear. This is not about excusing Diddy. So please don't come into my chat and be like, why are you defending Diddy? If you watch all my videos, no, I am not a Diddy fan. I am not defending Diddy. His charges are serious and survivors deserve justice. That's clear. Have I made myself clear? What I'm talking about today is fairness and equality and how a lot of these cases are handled and treated. Because if you recall, I did report on Jeffrey. I did. I reported on him before. The CEO, former CEO of Abercrombie, right? I reported on him before. But as you know, everyone has been Diddy. Everyone around the world is talking about Diddy, a black man in America. News, commentary, panel author. Everywhere you look, his name is front and center. But child, when it comes to Mike Jeffries, the former Abercrombie CEO, indicted for sex trafficking, prostitution, a white man in America, he skates on by, declares mental incompetency, gets bail, and faces no real consequences. Let's talk about it. Again, please, I am not excusing Diddy. At the same time, I'm wondering why people are excusing Jeffries. Why? Again, all crime needs to be treated equally. And that's the topic I'm talking about. And people like, have y'all heard of any updates on Mike Jeffries? Now, I'm not saying that no one has ever, reported on him or gave updates, but it's rare to, have any updates on Mike Jeffries. What is happening? They have similar allegations, similar states, other similarities, but when it comes to the bail and other things, and everywhere around the world, a lot of people are not hammering in on hammer. And whether a criminal is white or black, whatever, we need to give the same energy. That's my opinion. Okay. So I'm thinking like, they bring out Abercrombie guy and they are going to nail him and give him the same treatment as Diddy. And we're going to have two trials simultaneously. The white guy over here, Diddy over here. And we're going to be nailing both of these people for sex trafficking and interstate prostitution. And then what do we have months later? Just Diddy getting fried. And what a white guy. So I'm waking up and I'm like, where is the Abercrombie guy? Yeah. So let's get into an update on what's happening with the Abercrombie guy. Like, what happened to this story? It was like, it seemed like it was going to take off. It seemed like it was going to be something, and then boom, nothing. And the first thing I noticed was he got bail. I'm like, wait, he got bail? Huh? He got bail. So like I said, I'm going to go over both cases briefly. Now, everyone pretty much knows what's happening with Diddy, obviously. But we're going to look at the criminal charges, of course, the civil suits. And another comparison, both of them have had civil suits filed against them from victims filing civil cases, not just, the state and government filing criminal charges. And there's also, I will say, people are going to say, well, one has a mental illness and one doesn't. It has nothing to do with race. So I'm going to get into the whole competency, quote unquote, competency ruling for, Jeffries. And then we're going to line them up, of course, side by side. We're going to just compare these two. And you will, see what I mean. And then you might have a different take or a different opinion. That's fine. This is America. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I'm just giving mine. But like I said, black scandals become global entertainment, people dissecting what happens in the black community and black topics and black news and black this and black that. And I'm saying, where is the whole topics on white corporate predators? White corporate predators. He has victims too. Allegedly. Let me say allegedly. Allegedly, he has victims too. What about the victims of this corporate predator right here. And we can also bring, sexism in or sex stuff into it as well, where, Diddy's victims are mainly going to be, of course, the women, and then Mike Jeffries, the men. So then people can say, well, there's an unfairness to where men that are victimized are not getting the same treatment as women that are victimized. We can also go that route. But all I can say is, where is Mike Jeffries? Where is he? So, if you grew up in the 2000s, or if not, okay, you remember Abercrombie and Fitch, the mall culture, the stores all over the mall, shirtless models, the cologne that could knock you out before you even walked into the store. And behind it all, of course, Mike Jeffries. Jeffries ran Abercrombie from the early 1990s until 2014. He had a reputation for being eccentric. I mean, look at him. He looks quite eccentric. And he looks kind of secretive. But yeah, and also controlling. The company also during over time has faced lawsuits for discrimination, certain unfair marketing that excluded certain people or certain things, and like a cult-like atmosphere at this environment. But what the world didn't know, what we all didn't know at the time, was that Jeffries and his partner, Smith, I think Matthew Smith, were, allegedly running something much sinister, dark stuff behind the scenes, just similar to Diddy, where we're hearing about all this stuff that he's been doing. And now things have been rumored with Diddy, but it all came to the surface, especially when Cassie filed her lawsuit in November 2023, right? But behind the scenes of all this Abercrombie and Fitch, we have, Jeffries over here and his partner, Matthew Smith, over there, using that business and his name and his influence and power and status to be doing all sorts of scandalous stuff, right? And when you side these people side by side, you of course have Diddy and you have Jeffries. And both have these similar charges, both around in New York. He gets no bail, and he gets, what did he get? I think $10 million bail. He gets a bail, he does not. Diddy, of course, Abercrombie CEO. He's like an Abercrombie CEO. He's the bad boy. So then what is actually happening here? Hold on. But let's actually go and listen to a little bit of a video. But I want to say this first. In around October 2023, a BBC investigation kind of cracked this open about Jeffries. And survivors started coming forward. And they were pretty much saying that Jeffries had set up a secret recruitment pipeline, and that young men were being promised modeling gigs, and they were getting flued out. They were getting flued out. Okay, they were getting flown to parties and then pressured into sex. And some of these men were saying they were drugged. Doesn't a lot of this sound familiar? And some said, now this is the word that was brought up during the Diddy trial, that they were being coerced into these sexual engagements and sexual acts of prostitution or other things like that. And that investigation that from BBC laid the foundation or groundwork, should I say, for what was going to be coming next, as far as Jeffries. Now, for Cassie and Diddy, and for the Diddy lawsuit, Cassie filed her lawsuit, which kind of opened the doors and led to criminal investigation into Diddy. And now, as far as Jeffries, the BBC investigation kind of led to this whole investigation of Mike Jeffries. So sometimes, of course, the media and even social media, civil cases or other things can lay the groundwork on a foundation to where later criminal charges can be, brought because the people become under investigation due to them being in a public eye. So fast forward, at the BBC, we're doing that. So around October of 2024, a grand jury in the Eastern District of New York. Now, remember, Diddy's case is in the Southern District of New York, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, another case out of New York!" But this time, it was the Eastern District of New York, and they indicted Jeffries. And they also indicted other people as well, Matthew Smith and a recruiter that they said pretty much was helping recruit a guy by the name of James Jacobson. Okay. And so let me actually read directly from the indictment. And also I have another document I want to read from as well. But basically from the indictment, it was saying from approximately 2008 to 2015, the defendants operated an international sex trafficking and prostitution business. They recruited men for commercial sex acts through fraud, coercion, and deception. Men were promised modeling opportunities, pressure to consume alcohol and drugs, and required to sign non-disclosure agreements, and in some cases forcibly injected with erection-inducing drugs. So if they could not, achieve an erection on their own, they were forcibly injected with erection-inducing drugs. And it doesn't stop there. Let's continue to read some more on this. And it said, the defendants intentionally recruited heterosexual men. They intentionally not chose like gay men or even bisexual men. They intentionally recruited heterosexual men, some unwilling to engage in particular sex acts, and insisted that men who had refused still engage in those acts. They pressured men to consume alcohol, Viagra, and poppers, required men to surrender personal belongings like phones and wallets, and made them sign NDAs under threat of damages. And let's continue reading the document. It says, then a disturbing line says, on more than one occasion, the defendants directed or personally injected men in their PPs, their slong, with a prescription grade erection inducing substance to force them to engage in sex acts they were otherwise unwilling or unable to perform. And y'all, this is not, again, some minor scandal. This is a corporate funded sex trafficking, and yet it has not been given the same spotlight as the Diddy case. And let's be clear, I am not excusing Diddy or saying that Diddy should not have been brought to trial or indicted or punished or be in jail. I believe that Diddy is wrong. I'm not saying that I'm saying that all criminals facing similar charges should have similar experiences and go through the similar criminal justice process and have similar treatment. That's what I'm saying. Like, what's happening here? And also, I believe there should be similar reporting across the board of it. And this is why, if you only hammer in when it's a Black person, like hammer in on the person in the topic when it's a similar case, then it gives the impression that this is the face of this type of crime. This is the face of all these crimes. All these crimes, the face of it is someone Black. How about this? The face of a lot of these crimes needs to be made sure that everyone knows that interstate prostitution is going to be Diddy is the face. How about Mike Jeffries? Both. I'm just saying there needs to be equal reporting, equal criminalization of all these things, equal charges, equal press, equal everything, equal bond bail, equal things for criminals. All criminals should be treated equally. All criminals, let's treat all criminals equally across the board. Okay. I want to see more people talking about Mike, people like Mike Jeffries when these cases happen. Where I want to see everybody reporting on Mike Jeffries in these types of cases, and with the same energy and vigor as they do with Diddy. So, and we have to think about it this way. Mike Jeffrey has victims. What about his victims? What about the men that were victimized by Mike Jeffries? People say the victims, the focus is on the victims. And I'm saying, yes, I agree. The focus should be on the victims, but not only women victims, but male victims. And we have to be honest here. In society, we have it to where if a woman is a victim of a sex crime, she gets treated better and more, society is less judgmental and more goes harder when it's I will say there's a different angle to this. Women victims of sex crimes, people feel more sorry for them. They feel like they are the ideal victim and things like that. Men that are victimized, it's like, oh, you're a man, you could defend yourself. You're a little bitch because you couldn't defend yourself. Oh, you're gay. They question people's sexuality. They go on and on and on. When men are actually the victims of any type of sex crime, they get less sympathy. People often overlook them or things like that. So in this case, when we don't give people like Mike Jeffries the same treatment as Diddy, his victims get to not get justice. They get, overlooked. And then such is the life as someone like Mike Jeffries skates on by because he's a white privileged male that has a lot of freaking money. Okay? And people could say, oh no, it's because he's mentally incompetent. I've seen a lot of things happen, even with the Hadley case, the Damari Hadley case. And in that case, the mother, Desiree Perez, the CEO of Roc Nation, was able to pay a lot of money or pay people to do all sorts of things. So if you actually look at that case and you're actually honest with yourself, that mother had private investigators. She was able to get her daughter illegally Baker acted. And a doctor actually signed off on her daughter getting Baker acted. There are other people participating in that whole thing with her daughter as well, because I understand like that's a mother trying to get her daughter away from a domestic violence abuser. But ultimately, that case also shows you how someone with money can get a lot done. They can get a lot done and have people on their payroll or certain things, So is it possible that he does have mental cognitive disorders, that he is now mentally incompetent? Yes, but I have a whole thing about Mike Jeffries alleging that he's mentally incompetent to stand trial because now he's pleading insanity, or should I say mentally incompetence. Yeah. So that's the whole thing. But let's go ahead and watch a couple of videos for those that don't know about the Jeffries case. So Jeffries was arrested on October 22nd, 2024 in Florida, okay? And here's one big difference I want to point out. He was actually granted pretrial release. Before you have trial, you can sometimes get released on bail. Everyone knows that. And then there's also such thing as pre-sentencing release, what Diddy tried to get. Diddy tried to get pretrial release. He didn't get it. He tried to get pre-sentencing release. He didn't get it. And by the way, his sentencing is October 3rd. And I will be going more over those Diddy letters this weekend. But yeah. However, Mike Jeffries, he was granted pretrial release on a $10 million bond. Diddy was trying to put up his house in Miami. He had a house in Miami. He was trying to even put that up. And put up this and say, he put up, it was tons of pages of what he can possibly do for bond conditions so he can get out of jail. And guess what? Diddy was still denied, and rightfully so. I'm happy he was denied. Yes, I want him to be denied bond. I was happy he was denied bond, not once, not twice, but a million times. Child, his lawyer, keep on trying to get him out of jail. And I'm happy that Diddy is still behind bars. He deserves it. Now, here's the thing. Mike Jeffries should not have been out on... Let me tell you, why was Mike Jeffries with that whole slew of charges in that indictment, why is someone like him with all that money definitely a flight risk? And if you look at his charges indictment, he's dangerous based on what the victim said. So why in the world did this rich white man with dangerous charges and all this money, obviously a flight risk, get bail? And the Eastern District of New York and go to the Southern District, and Diddy facing similar charges. He didn't get no bail. I'm just saying, what's the difference? What was the difference? Now, and yes, you heard me right. Bail at home with the ankle monitor. I posted the pictures before. Mike Jeffries, creepy little guy walking outside with his ankle monitor right after he was charged with all this. Imagine how his victims felt. Imagine how his victims felt when he was on TV just walking out of jail and walking around his house like he's a free man. Eyes free. Look at that little evil Chucky grin right there. He did all that. Money, power, influence. He's out of jail. Money, power, influence. Diddy behind the bars, behind the jail cells. Both charged with interstate prostitution, and one in and one out. Now, I'm not saying Diddy should be out, but I am saying that Mike Jeffries should be in that jail, under the jail, 3 meals a day in a cot. Mike Jeffries should be in jail too. That's what I'm saying. Equal opportunity and equal treatment for criminals. I believe in equal treatment for criminals. All criminals convicted of the same crimes should get the same time and the same treatment and the same motherfucking bail. That's my point. Okay? So, what in the world is he doing out on bail at home, ankle monitor? Not compare that to Diddy, who was denied bail outright. Say he was dangerous. He was a flight risk. He got this and he got this resources. But wait a minute. Why isn't he declared as dangerous, a flight risk, and all that? Well, I think, who is Richard? Let me see who got the most money. Well, I'm sure it might be, the Abercrombie Fitch guy. Let me Google real fast. Who has the most money? Let's see, Jeffries or Diddy. My bad, I was not planning on talking about this, but I'm just curious. See their comparison here. Net worth as of mid-2025, Sean Combs' net worth was estimated by Forbes to be about $400 million. And the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch in 2024, his net worth was estimated to be $300 million. So I would say they're about in the same ballpark of looks. Like, so if one man is considered a flight risk, how come the other isn't considered a flight risk? And one man, Diddy, actually mostly surrendered by actually going and traveling to from Miami to New York to make sure he was in the area when he realized he was being indicted. Now, again, I'm not saying that Diddy should be out. I have to keep on repeating myself. I'm not saying that Diddy should be out. I'm saying that Mike Jeffries should be in there with Diddy, and they both should be in there. Okay? So the only people to twist my words, oh, she wants Diddy to be out. No, I said I want Mike Jeffries to be in. I want both of them in there. Both of them in the jail. Okay? And like I said, Diddy was denied bail outright. And from there, the case moved slowly, of course. And the Department of Justice produced about 140 gigabytes of discovery, witness statements. There was emails, travel logs, on receipts. In fact, the government said the evidence was so massive, they needed extra time just to organize all the information and receipts they had. And the defense agreed. So things kept getting delayed. So let's actually watch a couple of videos for those that don't know about this case, about Mike Jeffries. But again, This is not my first time reporting on this or even saying something similar. I've been reported this way back when this first started, okay? So let's watch this one first.
The former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch has pleaded not guilty to more than a dozen criminal charges in just the last few hours related to allegations that he ran an international sex trafficking business. That's Mike Jeffries leaving court today out on $10 million bond. His employee, James Jacobson, pleaded not guilty a little earlier, make that a little later today as well. You'll recall that Jeffries, Jacobson, and Jeffries' partner, Matt Smith, are all facing charges or a scheme the prosecutors say ran from 2008 to 2015. They're accused of spending millions to organize so-called sex events and lure young men in using, quote, coercive, fraudulent, and deceptive tactics. The men were allegedly promised modeling opportunities or help with their careers, and if they didn't comply with what was asked of them at these sex events, then they were told it could harm their careers. That according to the indictment. NBC's George Solis is joining us now. George, Jeffrey's partner is supposed to enter a plea. What are you hearing? What's happening there now?
Yeah, Tom, what happens now is that Jeffries must remain here in New York City, Long Island, or the Southern District of Florida, where he has a home. He remains out on that $10 million bond. And it was actually Jeffries' attorney that during this hearing entered that plea of not.
Yeah, not guilty, of course. Who is going to say that they are guilty? Yes, I'm guilty of interstate prostitution. Yes, I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of injecting men forcefully without their consent. I'm guilty of, recruiting and doing all this stuff. So, of course, who is going to actually say they're guilty? Most people are going to go to court and say, not guilty, Your Honor, and hope that the prosecution doesn't have enough evidence to slam them and nail them. That's obvious. Now, my question is, why is he out on $10 million bond? If someone needs $10 million to get out, then they shouldn't be out. Again, if someone needs a ridiculous amount of money to get out, then maybe their crime is severe enough to not even warrant or even to get a bond. Why get a bond? $10 million tells me that the crime is serious and you shouldn't even be out. But of course, he slapped down 10 million. He's out. Diddy offers up, I think, like 5 times as much, and he's stuck in jail. And again, I don't want Diddy to be out. I want, Mike Jeffries to be in. And that's my point. What about Mike Jeffries' victims? Justice for Mike Jeffries' victims. Justice for them. What about that? Okay.
Guilty. Now, we do know he was joined in court by his wife and son. Now, all 3 defendants, including Jeffries, face those 16 federal criminal charges, that 1 count of sex trafficking and 15 counts of interstate prostitution tied to the alleged 15 victims. Prosecutors again alleging that Jeffries and associates ran that sex trafficking scheme from 2018 to 2015, and that overlaps to some degree with Jeffries' tenure as the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch. Now, according to the indictment, these men used coercive and fraudulent deceptive tactics to get these men to attend these sex events, as you mentioned, so that these models would be promised these lucrative modeling deals. Now,
and of course, people rich and famous, they offer people these opportunities, or they pretend to have, we have these, if you do X, Y, and Z, you might get a reward. You might get a benefit. So they use their power and influence to try to convince people or try to, give the, illusion that you will benefit from it financially or through some sort of opportunity by actually complying.
For the most part, Prosecutors said that these guys went along with this because they thought it would lead to a career with the agency. And we know at some of these parties, according to the indictment, they were given alcohol and drugs, muscle relaxants known as poppers. Now, for its part, Abercrombie issuing a statement saying, quote, "Our thoughts remain with those who bravely raise their voices." Keep in mind that Jeffries stepped down as CEO of Abercrombie in 2014. So the company has had some distance from him for a while now, but some of these allegations also surfacing last year, and some of these coming to light now based on this current indictment, Tom.
You know, we've seen some high-profile figures accused of sex trafficking in recent years, not unlike the Me Too movement. Does each case seem to empower others to come forward?
So I'm actually going to switch over here really quickly.
One count of human trafficking, and Jeffries, along with his life partner Matthew Smith, stood before a federal judge today, both charged with the same 16 crimes. One count of human trafficking and 15 counts of interstate prostitution.
15 counts of interstate prostitution. My. I think that was more than what Diddy was charged with. But hey, Diddy gets a 9 bond, and Mike Jeffries gets to pay $10 million and walk on out, while Diddy offers about $50 million, 5 times as much. And again, I'm not saying Diddy should be out. I'm saying Mike Jeffries should be in. Why is he out walking? And I'm gonna get to that because he has declared that he's mentally incompetent to stand trial. We're gonna get to that, okay? We're going to get to it.
Any comments on the charges? Michael Jeffries, the former Abercrombie
and
Fitch CEO, is that
Here he is. He paid the $10 million. He's out. He's out. He's free. Eyes free. He already knew that he wasn't going to be in there. Like, I got the money, I got the power, I got the influence. Paid us $10 million. I'm out of jail. Middle finger to my victims. Middle finger to my victims. I'm Mike Jeffries. I'm white. I'm privileged. I can just pay my way out of everything. People always tell you just because you black and you become rich and wealthy, it doesn't mean that you can pay your way out of everything. Because obviously, Diddy offered $50 million. His black ass still in jail. Okay, you forgot Diddy. You got the money, you got the wealth and influence and the power, but you ain't got the white skin. Okay, that's all I'm saying. A mess.
Of jail on a $10 million bond. A judge ordering the 80-year-old house arrest at his Palm Beach apartment on Royal Palm Way. His partner and alleged conspirator, Matthew Smith, was also taken into federal custody and is now on his way to New York. Smith is a citizen of the UK and a permanent resident of the United States. Prosecutors say the couple used the power of the Abercrombie name, pressuring aspiring models into sex acts for money, using drugs and alcohol.
They caused the men to believe that attending these sex events could yield modeling opportunities with Abercrombie or otherwise benefit their careers.
Prosecutors say there are 15 victims with, quote, dozens more that could come forward.
This interstate prostitution venture encompassed dozens and dozens of men. And I encourage anyone with information about this case, including anyone who was a victim of the defendant's alleged crimes, to contact the FBI.
Investigators say the couple is also accused of hiring a third man, James Jacobson, to recruit the alleged victims.
Jacobson engaged in, quote, tryouts with men across the world where he would typically pay them to engage in sex acts with him.
If convicted, they could both face life in prison for the trafficking charge and an additional 20 years in prison.
If convicted, but of course, is he convicted? Or what is he actually doing in present day? Oh, he's still out on bond, and he has declared that he is mentally incompetent, that he cannot stand trial due to his mental incompetence. So we're going to actually read that document in just a moment, okay?
For each of those 15 charges of interstate prostitution. Reporting in West Palm Beach, I'm Michael Hoffman.
And then, of course, he also went to court.
Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries appeared in court on Long Island in his federal sex trafficking case. Jeffries and other men pleaded not guilty to multiple counts in what prosecutors just...
Do you believe that Mike Jeffries is mentally incompetent? And also, was he mentally incompetent before these charges, or was this something new that was recently discovered and then now he's mentally incompetent? Also, if he's so mentally incompetent, he cannot stand trial, then why isn't he under some sort of conservatorship? Aren't other people under conservatorships when it's so severe? They have a lot of money and people feel like they're mentally incompetent, so they need someone to overlook them and watch out for them. They need to be under a conservatorship or something. So it's not that severe for him. He's not under a conservatorship or anyone over him, but he's too mentally incompetent to stand trial. How very interesting. I just feel like if someone was way mentally incompetent and they could not stand trial, then why aren't other legal proceedings? Now I'm saying a separate proceeding or legal proceeding, why aren't other measures being taken to protect him from himself under some sort of conservatorship or something else? Or is he still mentally competent enough to actually take care of himself financially and everything about himself, but he doesn't have any assistance? Like, what's going on here? Okay, so he's incompetent. He can't stand trial, but he's competent enough to take care of himself outside of the jail and everything that requires competency in real life outside of jail. But okay, quite confusing if you ask me.
Describe as a years-long and international scheme. CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen is outside the courthouse. Tom, you were in court today. What happened?
Yeah, well, Lindsay, it was primarily a procedural hearing today with the prosecution and defense going over discovery evidence, timelines, those kinds of things. We did watch as all three defendants, CEO Mike Jeffries, Matthew Smith, and James Jacobson, walked into the courtroom stone-faced. They were wearing ankle monitors. They've been let out on bond as they await trial. But this was really their first time face-to-face with the judge that's going to preside over this case, Judge Chaudhry. Now, the prosecution laid out the scope of their evidence. That includes 140 gigabytes worth, which basically boils down to about 3,500 different pieces of evidence, ranging from travel logs, financial records.
All this evidence against him, all these gigabytes of evidence. And yet he is the one that, he gets a bail. He gets bond. He has a $10 million bond. He gets out. He gets bailed out of jail. And there's a lot of evidence against him. And it looks like it may even be more evidence than what they had to nail Diddy that they had against him. But he gets to walk on out. He's not considered a danger to society or a flight risk or any of this. He gets his bail conditions signed. A seal of approval that he gets to get a bail and bonded out. But why? What about the victims of Mike Jeffries? What about their day in court? What makes his case with 15 counts of interstate prostitution different from Diddy's charges? And he also had a charge of sex trafficking. What makes these cases different? Obviously, we know that there's another component or element, and that is male victims versus female victims. So we can look at that as well. And then on the other side, we also have to realize that the defendants also have to be compared. A lot of times, male victims are not treated as fairly when it comes to sex crimes, and that includes minors. And that's why a lot of men don't come forward, because they know they're not going to get the same treatment and same fairness and the same empathy as women victims of sex crimes. And we have to actually take a look at that in society, because to be honest, a lot of boys from a young age, they are violated, and sex crimes occur and they are victimized by these sex crimes, and this can impact some of these young boys and change their trajectory of their life and their life path. And there are some people that end up hurting other people because of their abuse and things like that. So When it comes to sex crimes, this is a problem in America, and we have to make sure that when it comes to sex crimes, everyone that is a culprit perpetrator of these sex crimes need to be held accountable, whether the victim is a male or a female. People need justice no matter what. And then on top of that, unfortunately, when you have a male defendant that's white and wealthy and rich, you also now have someone that's privileged. So anyone that's a victim of someone like this could potentially not get justice, compared to if the defendant were, let's say, Diddy, you'll probably get some justice compared to someone like Mike Jeffries. So in that way, looking at it from the victim standpoint to the actual defendant's privilege, now we get to where this will happen. And people can say, people probably expected this to happen for Diddy, but the thing about it is Diddy has privileges as far as wealth, fame, and things like that, but he does not have privileges when it comes to his skin color. He's black. So a lot of times the Black people are criminalized and treated unfairly in the justice process, in the criminal justice process, where you have a white male and a black male committing the same crimes, and the black male, and it's based on research and stats, will commit the same crime but get more time, get probably not get bail, or there's going to be mistreatments or inequalities in the criminal justice process. And again, for people just joining in, I'm not saying that Diddy should be out of jail. I'm saying Mike Jeffries should be his bunkie. I'm saying Mike Jeffries needs to be in jail too. He needs to be in jail. Mike Jeffries, take your ass to jail. And you're not mentally incompetent enough that you don't need a conservatorship, but you need, you don't need to be, okay. So you're too, unwell to take care of yourself, and you can't be in jail because you don't understand what's happening to you. You're mentally incompetent, but you understand how to still take care of yourself in the real world without a conservatorship or someone over all your operations, over everything that you do, and over your whole well-being, and not, you don't need a caregiver or anything. Oh, okay. If you're not to the point of needing a conservatorship or something like that, I believe that you're competent enough to stand trial and face all your crimes, because something tells me, in my opinion, now I will say that doctors have signed off and said that he's mentally incompetent. So I'm actually going to go over those reports, but I'll be honest, at first I wasn't really into conspiracies and things like that, but I will say, after reading the Hadley case and how the mother, the CEO of Rock Nation, how she pretty much threw her money around and was able to get her daughter illegally Baker acted, and had a lot of people, private investigators doing things for her. There was people with degrees doing things for the mother. And there also was a doctor, Dr. Bober, who actually signed off on her being Baker acted, that also was involved. So when money is being thrown around, I'm sorry, but it's anything. Now, sometimes, of course, they have people that step in, like, let's say the prosecutors will have their own, like, psychiatrists or psychologists or testing or evaluation. And then on the defense, they will also have one. And then that's supposed to make it more fair or more believable. But I just don't know. Altogether, even before they did the competency evaluation and testing, before they even did that, the injustice had already occurred. Again, before they even determined that he was mentally incompetent, the injustice had already occurred because he had already been let out of jail on $10 million bond. So the unfairness was already being shown anyway. It wasn't until much later that he was declared mentally incompetent. Shout out to Judy Coles. Thank you so much for your says thank you, Dani, for all your hard work and sending some roses. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Again, shout out to you. I appreciate the support. And everybody else, remember, support my channel for free just by hitting that like button.
records, witness statements, post-arrest statements. And so this is really shaping up to be a very high-profile trial out here on Long Island, one that is highly anticipated. A lot of people are going to be watching, and it is going to be a huge amount of evidence to sift through as we await the trial.
A huge amount of evidence. Everyone is anticipating a big trial. And then crickets. There's no big trial. All this evidence. He gets out on bail. And then nothing. Crickets.
Date, Lindsay.
Did Jeffries say anything in court? Can you explain his demeanor?
Yeah, no, he was stone-faced and very serious, not reactive to much. He did not make a statement. In fact, none of the defendants made a statement today. So there really wasn't any kind of inkling as to how they were feeling. They were very demure in their demeanor. One thing I should note is that the defense had hoped to keep one document sealed, and that document was to determine Jeffries' competency to stand trial. Now, we asked the lawyer for CEO Mike Jeffries if he had any sort of comment about that while he walked out to the car. He basically looked through me like I didn't exist and got in the car, didn't respond, but he did reach out to CBS News afterward, and he said, I quote, "We filed a motion to determine Mr. Jeffries' competency to stand trial, which will be dealt with in court as and when appropriate, according to the judge." But I just want to keep in mind, these defendants are aging. Mike Jeffries, for instance, is 80 years old at this point, Lindsay.
I got to be quick with you. What happens next?
Yeah, well, there was no trial date set today, but the next meeting is going to be on March 13th, 2025. They're going to regroup and go through more of the terms of the trial.
Tom Hansen, thank you so much.
So you heard that at that point, after he's already out on bail, of course, the defense, they are going to figure out or try to figure out how they can get him out of this sex trafficking and interstate prostitution. How can we get him out? We gotta win this case. I mean, to be honest, they have tons and tons of evidence, and they said all these gigabytes of evidence against Mike Jeffries. This is going to nail him. It's not looking good. Oh, I know. He's mentally incompetent. He's mentally incompetent. So let's actually look at what they had to say about his evaluation. Like I said, there was a curveball and curveball. Jeffries' lawyer said he wasn't mentally competent to stand trial. And like I said, competency does not mean guilty or not guilty for people that, I'm just clarifying for people that don't know. It means, do you understand what is going on in court? Can you actually help your lawyer and assist your lawyer in your, in your pursuit or in this whole criminal justice process? Can you assist your lawyer? Can you help your lawyer? Do you understand the charges being brought against you and what's happening, what's going on? If you don't, the case freezes. It freezes. So in December of 2024, his lawyers did file for a competency exam. And by early 2025, early this year, both the defense doctors and government doctors agreed. So I will say this and be fair, that the defense doctors and government doctors, that means that Mike Jeffries, let me actually change this backdrop really quickly. So Mike Jeffries, his lawyers for his side, which is the defense, and then the government side, which brought these charges, indictment, right? They also were both saying on both sides that they agreed that Jeffries has dementia, Alzheimer's, Lewy body disease, and a history of traumatic brain injury. So people are saying that's why, he's not going to really stand trial. Okay, my thing is, before they even did any of these competency evaluations or testing, they had already gave him bond and bail and let him out and things like that. So there was already unfairness at the beginning before any evaluations were done. And so on May 2nd, 2025, The judge had ruled that Jeffries was pretty much incompetent to stand trial, and she ordered him to be hospitalized under the attorney general at a medical center. Okay, but get this: as of May 13th, the government still had not even given him a date to report. Okay, so so he's sitting at home, he's on bond, and he actually gets to go on the phone for hearings, and his case is currently at this moment kind of frozen or stuck in limbo until December. Okay, so now I want to read you straight from the actual court documents and the documents. I'm reading from the document. So that on the May 13, 2025, the status conference, defendant Michael Jeffries appears telephonically on bond. Competency hearing is canceled in light of the court's May 2nd order. The attorney general has designated defendant Jeffries to Butner, but has not identified a date for him to report. Pretty much that was like a no in-person court, no orange jumpsuit, just a phone call from home. So he was still out on bond. Okay. And then let me read the next court document, August 13, 2025 order. And it pretty much said the court hereby excludes time from August 14, 2025 to December 11, 2025 under the Speedy Trial Act because Jeffries is mentally incompetent. Defendants Smith and Jacobson are also delayed as co-defendants. The adjourned status conference will be held on December 11, 2025, again by telephone. So now we're waiting until December 11, 2025, okay? So not only is Jeffries out free, his whole case is on ice until the end of 2025, and the trial clock doesn't even tick because of his incompetency findings. So he has been kind of declared mentally incompetent, okay? So let me actually read some of the document, not all, okay? And if you're on Twitter, I'm actually going to end my Twitter. I'm going to actually end the Twitter session. So make sure you come on my YouTube channel, which is at DaniRobertson. That's YouTube at DaniRobertson. Again, that's YouTube. And then the @ symbol DaniRobertson. So make sure you come over to my YouTube channel. So April 10th, 2025, this was actually filed. And Judge Chaudhry, let me actually minimize a little bit so I can see the full. And it says, on October 17, 2024, defendant Michael S. Jeffries was charged by indictment with one count of sex trafficking in violation of 18 U.S.C. and 15 counts of interstate prostitution in violation of 18 U.S.C. And it gives that, okay? And it says counts 2 through 16, okay? On December 9th, 2024, Mr. Jeffries filed his unopposed motion to determine competency to stand trial and incorporated memorandum of law motion to determine competency under seal. On December 10th, 2024, the court granted Mr. Jeffries' motion to determine competency in order inter alia that Mr. Jeffries be examined by Dr. Alexander S. Barty and Dr. Cheryl Paradis for the purpose of determining Mr. Jeffries' competency to stand trial, and that each doctor thereafter prepare reports detailing the findings of their respective examinations. And it says, see December 10th, 2024 minute order granting Mr. Jeffries' unopposed motion to determine competency to stand trial. Between December 5th, 2024 and December 6th, 2024, Dr. Bradley and his colleague Miranda Rosenberg conducted a forensic psychiatric and neuropsychological evaluation of Mr. Jeffries. On February 6, 2025, a copy of Dr. Barty's report of his examination, the Barty Competency Evaluation Report, was submitted to the court under seal. On February 20th, 2025, Dr. Paredes also performed a forensic and neuropsychological evaluation of Mr. Jeffries. On March 20th, 2025, Dr. Paredes' report of her examination, the Paredes Competency Evaluation Report, was filed with the court under seal. And it says, based on their respective evaluations, Dr. Barty and Dr. Rosenberg and Dr. Paredes independently concluded that Mr. Jeffries is suffering from a mental disease or a defect, rendering him mentally incompetent to the extent that he is unable to understand the nature and consequences of the proceedings against him or to properly assist in his defense. And it says specifically, Doctors Barty and Rosenberg concluded inter alia that, this is a statement right here, it says, in conclusion, Ms. Jeffries meets DSM-5-TR criteria for a major neurocognitive disorder due to multiple etiologies, specifically Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body disease, and the residual effects of traumatic brain injury. These conditions collectively cause profound and permanent impairments in his cognitive and functional abilities, resulting in complete dependence on 24/7 care to maintain his health and safety. So he has 24/7 care to maintain his health and safety. Did he have this before after he was indicted? See, here's the thing. Did he have all of this 24/7 care before or after he was indicted? Did y'all know anything about his mental health deteriorating and Alzheimer's and Lewy body and any of these things before he was indicted, or was all these evaluations only done after he was indicted? So I'm just, to be honest, I don't know what to think about it. I mean, the defense and prosecutors both said they have their own doctors doing evaluation on this, but at the same time, also there's different levels of severity when it comes to Alzheimer's and things. I don't know, y'all. It just seems a little bit fishy that they have this whole evaluation and everything after he's indicted, but what happened to before the indictment? I don't know. So let's see. It says his cognitive deficits significantly impair his ability to understand the nature and consequences of the charges, consult with counsel in a rational manner, and participate in his defense with a reasonable degree of rational understanding. Given the severity and permanence of these impairments, there is no prospect for remediation through standard competency restoration interventions such as education or treatment. So they're pretty much saying that this is going to be permanent and there's no prospect for remediation or anything. Pretty much no. It says the progressive nature of his neurocognitive disorder ensures continued decline over time, further diminishing his already limited functional capacity. It is therefore our professional opinion, within a reasonable degree of psychological and psychiatric certainty, that Mr. Jeffries is not competent to proceed in the current case and cannot be restored to competency in the future. So they're saying, now sometimes when people, are declared mentally incompetent, they go through certain treatment programs or anything they can possibly do to restore the person to competency so they can stand trial and go through the criminal justice process. However, they are saying that there's no way, based on what he has been diagnosed with, that there's going to be any way he'll be ever mentally competent to stand trial. It's permanent. And it says, additionally, Dr. Paredes concluded, among other things, that Mr. Jeffries' history and presentation are consistent with the diagnosis of major neurocognitive disorder. His cognitive impairment is severe enough to qualify for a more commonly used term, dementia. Okay, it says the neuropsychological testing. I said dementia. Okay, the neuropsychological testing I conducted supports this diagnosis. In addition, he has consistently demonstrated significant cognitive impairment in all of the clinical evaluations that have been conducted over the past several years. It says the results of his numerous neuroimaging studies are also consistent with this disorder, which almost certainly worsened over time. It says, in my opinion, Mr. Jeffries is currently suffering from a mental disease or a defect which renders him mentally incompetent to the extent that he is unable to understand the nature and consequences of the proceedings against him and properly assist in his defense. Yeah. He would not be able to effectively assist his attorney in his defense due to significant memory impairments, cognitive decline, impaired decision-making capacity, and inappropriate behavior. His memory impairment almost certainly would cause him to be unable to accurately recall key events and details of the instant offense that occurred many years ago and severely limit his capacity to provide accurate and reliable information. So how is this testing actually done? Obviously, it's not just about someone can go into the office and, and just answer questions and just be like, oh, I can't remember, I forgot, or, things like that. There's also brain scans and other things that are done in conjunction. But I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. And it says, additionally, his inappropriate behavior, which is a symptom of his dementia, could further interfere with his ability to maintain proper courtroom demeanor and or take the stand in his own defense. He may blurt out self-incriminating statements or engage in erratic behavior. He may what? Blurt out self-incriminating statements or engage in erratic behavior, which will undermine his credibility and risk prejudicing, being prejudicial, right? The judge or jury against him, given these cognitive limitations and behavioral symptoms, he is incapable of meaningfully participating in his defense. I'm going to read this last part. As a result of the concurring expert opinions, the parties stipulated and agreed that Mr. Jeffries is presently suffering from a mental disease or defect, rendering him mentally incompetent to the extent that he is unable to understand the nature and consequences of the proceedings against him or to properly assist in his defense. And that a competency hearing is unnecessary because the bar impaired his competency evaluation reports contain definitive grounds to find by a preponderance of the evidence that Mr. Jeffries is presently suffering from a mental disease or defect, rendering him mentally incompetent to the extent that he is unable to understand the nature and consequences of the proceedings against him or to, properly assist in his defense. So that's what they're pretty much saying, okay? And Mr. Jeffries respectfully requests that the court accept the parties' stipulations and also asks that the court order inter alia that Mr. Jeffries be placed in the custody of the Attorney General for a period of time not to exceed 4 months to be hospitalized for the purpose of determining whether he will regain competency consistent with the procedure outlined in 18 U.S.C. So anyways, the next hearing is actually going to be, it said 4 doctors have evaluated him. The next hearing is going to be in December, okay? Hold on one second. So let me actually show y'all the picture with his actual ankle monitor on. So what do you all think? Do you believe that he is actually mentally incompetent? Or do you think this is very much so convenient to now all of a sudden declare him mentally incompetent to stand trial? So I'm actually going to put up a poll. Okay, hold on. So that's him right there with the ankle monitor on, okay? And that was when he was first released on $10 million bail. Just a second. No, I don't want that one. Hold on.
Abercrombie and Fitch, Mike Jeffries, appearing in federal court in West Palm Beach. He is one of 3 men at the center of an FBI investigation, accused of running a prostitution and international sex trafficking operation.
The defendants allegedly preyed on the hopes and dreams of their victims by exploiting, abusing, and silencing them to fulfill their own desires with insidious, secret intentions.
Good evening. I'm Felicia Rodriguez. Investigative reporter Terry Parker was in court for today's hearing and has been digging through that indictment. She learned prosecutors believe these crimes were going on for years.
The indictment charges that from 2008 to 2015, Michael Jeffries, his partner Matthew Smith, and their employee ran an international sex trafficking ring and prostitution business. And they used a network of people to make it all happen and to keep it secret. In court today, Jeffries appeared calm. And when the judge told him that he knew his lawyer and he was excellent, Jeffries said, "Good. I'm glad to hear that." 80-year-old Michael Jeffries, former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, looked calm, wearing a navy pullover sweater and white pants, leaving federal court surrounded by his lawyers after the judge ruled he could go free on bond while fighting his sex trafficking charges. Prosecutors agree with his lawyers on a $10 million bond, secured by a house he co-owns with his wife in Fishers Island, New York. Jeffries will be fitted with a GPS ankle monitor and restricted to his home on Palm Beach. The indictment states that Jeffries, his life partner Matthew Smith, and an employee of theirs used their power, wealth, and Jeffries' position at Abercrombie to entice more than a dozen young male model hopefuls to attend parties where they were forced into sex acts.
To anyone who thinks they can exploit and coerce others by using the so-called casting couch system, this case should serve as a warning. Prepare to trade that couch for a bed in federal prison.
Prosecutors say Jeffries used the promise of being an Abercrombie model to coerce.
So again, he is still out on bond. And as far as when they were talking about his competency as far as DSM, that's pretty much like a rule book for doctors, and it's pretty much used to define mental health conditions. So any mental health condition that they actually have labeled and defined as a mental health condition is probably going to be in that DSM. Okay, so if something meets DSM criteria, it's an official diagnosis in the medical world. Okay, and to be honest, people are always going to say there's a medicalization of everything, to where everything is becoming something, some sort of mental illness or some sort of disorder, or anything possibly wrong or considered abnormal could end up classified. As far as Alzheimer's disease, of course, people are going to be looking at that's a brain disease. It's progressive. It can get worse. Okay, and that can cause someone to actually have memory loss. They can be confused, and there can be a decline in their cognitive thinking and abilities and things like that. And it's also, people are, it's the one that's more associated, or say correlated or whatever, with dementia. And then as far as the Lewy body disease, I really don't know much about the Lewy body disease, I'll be honest. But obviously that is another brain disease, just by that document, how they classify as a neuro psychological issue or things like that. But obviously I do know that as well as Alzheimer's can cause memory loss and changes in someone's cognitive thinking or abilities and functioning as well. So all together, these issues are now causing him, people are saying that he's mentally incompetent, okay? And again, it's not just one side, it's the defense and prosecution. And they both have doctors that examine him, and they're both coming up with the same result. And since both sides, the defense and prosecution, agreed that he's not competent, the judge didn't even need to fight about it, because obviously both sides were in agreement. It's kind of like when there's a plea deal, and then the prosecutors on the prosecution and the defense agree to a plea deal, then there's no need to really fight, because there's agreements on both sides. In this case, if both sides are agreeing that he's incompetent, then they'll just not fight over it, or the judge doesn't really have to do that much. But by law, when someone is found incompetent, the judge had to send them into some sort of custody of the attorney general for up to 4 months at least in a medical facility. And during that time, doctors check if there's any chance he could get better or become competent to stand trial. If doctors say no, he's never going to be competent, which they pretty much are saying that it's permanent, then he can't be forced to stand trial. And then the charges basically just hang out there and be Elsa frozen. Elsa frozen is froze. The case cannot really move forward because they're saying that he's incompetent to stand trial. He cannot assist the lawyer with actually, through the criminal justice process, which is going to be unfair. Like I said, if Jeffries really needs 24/7 care, like they claim, why isn't someone already his conservator? Like Britney Spears has one, right? This is what happens when someone is legally declared unable to manage their life. And then what happened to Wendy Williams? So why is it something happening to Wendy Williams, Britney Spears? Where is that for Mike Jeffries? Is he still fully in charge of everything happening in his life, besides just having a caregiver? But what about everything else? Now, it is a separate legal process, so the judge cannot, in this criminal case, force him to have a conservator. But his lawyers and others around him, if they are claiming that he's incompetent and he needs 24/7 care, then why isn't that being done? So that's a little fishy. And people can say, well, that's none of your business. It could be happening behind the scenes. I doubt it. Someone like him, wealthy like him, if there was a conservatorship, it mostly would be known. And also there has to be legal proceedings for that to take place. And most people will get their hands on some sort of legal proceedings taking place as it pertains to someone like him, high profile. But in this case, it wasn't really about that. It was about his competency to stand trial, okay? And again, it's not over. The case is technically still pending. But like I said, if he's permanently incompetent, that means he never can actually be tried, because you have to be competent to stand trial. And again, could he ever be ruled competent? Yes, if he has something, if it was something temporary or treatable, and the doctors felt it was something fixable or curable or treatable, then yes. But the doctors are saying this is progressive, that's actually going to get worse, and that it's permanent, that it's going to be down here, from here it's going to get worse. So the chances of him ever being competent, unless there's some sort of cure for these disorders he has or illnesses he has, this is Alzheimer's, dementia, Lewy body, he's gonna be, incompetent, should I say. But child, I'll be honest, all of a sudden this man ain't responsible because of these alleged neurocognitive disorders. They got doctors saying he can't even follow the charges, can't remember the details, and might act out in court and incriminate himself. Okay, but if it's that bad, why no conservatorship or somebody legally running his life already? Where were all these diagnoses when he was, before he was indicted? Was he already seeing a doctor before he was indicted, or all of a sudden he has memory loss and all these issues now that he has been indicted with 1 count of sex trafficking, 15 interstate charges of prostitution, interstate prostitution. Now all of a sudden he has all these neurocognitive disorders. I can't remember. Now, again, someone could say they can't remember, play the game. But also there are other brain scans and other things they can kind of test to see if there's something going on. But someone can also still at the same time play games. I don't remember. I don't recall. I don't remember. I probably can pretend like I got dementia and Alzheimer's. But then, of course, if they do any brain scans, they're going to be looking for certain things as well. But, I mean, you can still fake it, you know, some parts, okay? Especially when you could pretend like it's early onset or something, or you're in the beginning stages of it. But pretty much, it's not like, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, the judge did send him off for 4 months of observation. But those same doctors already said it's permanent, meaning this case is going to be stuck in limbo. He's charged, but if his mind is truly gone, he may never face a jury, and that's just it. Someone says Clive Davis plays the same game, just saying. Well, I don't know. I don't know, y'all. I just think, listen, if he already had a lot of health issues and his mental, neurocognitive disorders were already on paper before he was indicted, then so be it. But all of a sudden now he's indicted, and all of a sudden now he has a slew of neurocognitive disorders. Fishy. So what I'm looking for is, what was he diagnosed with, or what was happening to him before he was indicted? Because all of a sudden, all these indictments he playing, it's fishy. It's fishy, okay? Yeah, suddenly he's practically a vegetable, okay? Jay Booster says, if he really incompetent, they would have sent him to a mental facility at this time to fulfill the remaining of his sentence. This is BS. And by the way, he was sentenced. He was sentenced for 4 months, and then he was supposed to come back in August for an update. But now they have kind of extended that to December.
The men into sex, often using drugs. The indictment says their employees scouted the young men from across the world and invited them to parties where they were then forced into having sex with Jeffries and Smith and others.
Jeffries and Smith employed James Jacobson to act as a recruiter to find men. Jacobson engaged in, quote, tryouts with men across the world where he would typically pay them to engage in sex acts with him.
The indictment follows civil lawsuits alleging the same charges. One of those plaintiffs, David Bradbury.
So today marks a big step forward on behalf of David Bradbury and the other survivors in this action. The arrest this morning served as a validation in their bravery for coming forward and sharing their stories and experiences, and our law firm looks forward to continue representing all survivors of abuse. And
Yes. What about Mike Jeffries' victims? Obviously, I know they are like, what in the world? This man is now declaring that he's mentally incompetent after everything he has done to us and everybody else with these 15 charges, and now he just gets to declare that he's mentally incompetent. So I would actually like to hear from these victims and their perspective and things like that. There's a such thing as people pleading insanity or some sort of mental decline or mental, issues or something to avoid accountability. Is this the case? But people can say, wait, Dani, listen, I would say it if it were just his doctors, but there are doctors on both sides saying the same thing. And I'm saying, yeah. Actually, let me actually look at... Wait, I just thought about something. The testing that was done to declare him incompetent. Hold on. Let's go back to that document real quick. It is further ordered that during the 4-month period of the defendant's custodial hospitalization, the parties shall be permitted to seek periodic reports from the Attorney General regarding the status of the defendant's condition and likelihood to regain competency. Upon receipt of such a request, the Attorney General shall file a status report with the court under seal regarding the status of the defendant's condition and likelihood to regain competency, and provide copies of the same to the parties. It is further ordered that if at any point prior to the conclusion of the defendant's 4-month custodial hospitalization, the Bureau of Prisons determines there is not a substantial probability that in the foreseeable future, the defendant will attain the capacity to permit the proceedings to go forward in the necessary risk assessments under 18 U.S.C. for 4246 and 4248 have been completed, the defendant shall be released from the custody of the Attorney General forthwith to home confinement with the same standard and special conditions of pretrial release he is currently subject to pending further proceedings by this court. So if he is declared competent or there are certain factors that take place, he will just obviously go back to being confined on pretrial release, bond, and go through the regular criminal justice process like everyone else. Hold on. So I'm going back up to see the examination that was done. Prior to the hearing, Dr. Alexander Barty and Cheryl Paradis shall each conduct a psychiatric or a psychological examination of Jeffries for the purpose of determining whether he presently suffers from a mental disease or a defect rendering him. Wait, I need to actually see the full. Did they do scans or just? I'm trying to see if it's just verbal testing or is there some sort of scans? Hold on.
Yeah, that's something that prosecutors and law enforcement in general kind of want to highlight. When you talk about some of these civil lawsuits that come in cases like the Jeffries one, they always believe that there might be more victims out there. So they always encourage, as difficult as it is for some of these victims in some of these cases, especially as the names start coming out, to come forward. We've seen it in the cases like Diddy. We've seen it in the cases of Jeffrey Epstein, R. Kelly. And again, the key messaging from prosecutors and law enforcement right now is, again, you have 15 alleged victims in this current indictment. Some of this, again, repeating itself from the 2023 allegations. So the concern is that there are more victims, and as difficult as it is, they are encouraging any victims in this case to come forward, Tom.
George.
So R. Kelly in jail, Diddy in jail, Epstein gone, Jeffries mentally incompetent. Interesting. Now that they showed that lineup.
Solis, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
So basically, showing 2 different doctors were appointed. There's a Dr. Alexander Barty and Dr. Cheryl Paradis for the government. And then both came back with pretty much the same conclusion. Jeffries was not competent. And Dr. Barty's team with Dr. Rosenberg did a forensic psychiatric and neuropsychological evaluation. By the way, that just means that they didn't just talk to him, they ran cognitive tests, such as to determine cognitive tests about memory, and things like that, decision making and things like that, to see his cognitive abilities and how well he's functioning, right? And then for Dr. Paradis, they also did forensic and neuropsychological evaluation, and pretty much she noted that she looked at neuroimaging studies, and so they pretty much just did brain scans, I'll say. So it wasn't just like asking him questions. They did actual brain scans. And so ultimately they said they used verbal testing and brain scans to back up their claims. That's what they're trying to say. So they're trying to say, yes, that he did meet these DSM-5 criteria for neurocognitive disorders, okay? So I want to say that. So what do you all think about that? Now, I will want to say this. Before they did any competency evaluations on him, my point is that before they did any evaluation and determined that he was incompetent, they had already freed him. By freeing him, I mean they had already considering his gigabytes of evidence against him for these sex crimes of sex trafficking, 15 counts of interstate prostitution, and he had all this evidence, and they indicted him. Obviously, they would not have indicted him if they felt like he was someone, you know, that they wouldn't be able to pursue this. Obviously, they did this investigation. They pursued him because they wanted to bring him in for justice. So he was not considered a dangerous, obviously a flight risk or anything to where he was held in jail like Diddy. He was actually getting a bail, hence my title. Why was he actually initially, before any evaluations, competency hearings or anything like that, why was he already given bail and let out? Okay. Yes. Hold on one second. So next I'm going to talk about, before I get out of here, just quickly, the civil side, because survivors did not stop with the criminal case, of course, right? This is the criminal case, but there's also civil lawsuits, just like people were filing civil lawsuits against Diddy. There's also civil lawsuits against Jeffries. In 2025, new lawsuits were filed in New York Civil Court. Two men said they were promised modeling opportunities, flew out, and then sexually abused by Jeffries and Smith. And like I said, this is civil, and civil court, the thing is, doesn't care if he's incompetent. You know, the case can still move forward with those civil cases because it's about damages, not necessarily jail. So even if Jeffries avoids a criminal trial, survivors can still pursue him for money and accountability for his actions. It's a coincidence to me that all of a sudden he has, you know, these neurological disorders, and that was only, you know, put out here or told before, you know, when he was indicted on all these charges and facing time in jail. And yeah, I just still found it very suspicious, I'll be honest. Hold on. So pretty much to sum things up, and then on top of that, when this first came out, a lot of people were not really reporting on it with the same vigor and the same with the same, like, you know, we're gonna get him, we're gonna nail him. There wasn't really a lot of talking, a lot of conversation about this Abercrombie guy, you know, with all these charges. He wasn't plastered every single where throughout this whole time. And in fact, even up to the point where they were doing these evaluations, he wasn't plastered everywhere, with everyone doing all these updates on Abercrombie. So a lot of times, the focus are on certain people in certain cases, and other people get less attention for the same crimes. And I think people need to actually pay attention to this. So I think a lot of times people are, you know, in America and around the world, I'll be honest, a lot of times people are focused on, to be honest, Black American culture and Black Americans and what Black Americans are. Because a lot of times, to be honest, leading the trends, a lot of trends and a lot of things come from, you know, Black America. So a lot of times, you know, people are gonna really, you know, focus on that Diddy more than Abercrombie a white guy. Yeah, he has the clothes. Yes, he has this. Yes, he has that. But he's not like someone that people are going to be like 100% focused on and more interested in. So that's why people will spend all this time talking about Diddy, and not actually Jeffries at the time, even when it first was landing out or whatever. I mean, YouTube is about clicks and views, who can get attention for this and who can get attention for that. A rapper, someone that's black, is going to get more attention, and more people are going to be like making a million thumbnails on this guy. And meanwhile, Jeffries, initially when he was first arrested, before any competency evaluations, nothing. Okay, nothing. And now his victims, they don't get any justice because he pretty much gets to skate out of here and declare that he's mentally incompetent. So the lineup is, of course, that Diddy was, denied, but before any competency evaluations, we'll have to compare these two before anything was said about any competency. Diddy was denied bail. Jeffries was granted $10 million bond. Competency, I don't know if Diddy was ever evaluated or ever brought up. People say that he has addiction issues. He has issues himself. If you actually read these Diddy letters, people are saying a lot of issues are happening with Diddy. And then of course, Jeffries declared unfit and incompetent to stand trial. And as far as coverage, everyone around the world was dissecting Diddy, a black man in America. Jeffries, a white man in America, barely whispered about. And here's the thing. What happened to all the evidence? They have all these gigabytes of evidence against him. Where would all this evidence go? Where is all the evidence? If he's not going to face trial, so that means all the evidence is buried and it goes away and disappears. His reputation, his character, everything is thrown. Like, where's all the evidence? Like, I still want to see all the evidence and everything that this man has done. Y'all say y'all have massive evidence, gigabytes, tons of stuff. And people are saying, release the Epstein files. Release the Epstein, release the Epstein, release the Epstein. And my thing is, what about this case? Don't y'all want to see the evidence they have against Jeffries? Or will he be privileged to where he's not going to be exposed? Everything they have on him is just going to be what? So what can be done about getting our hands on the evidence collected against Jeffries? Or is he going to be covered? Is he going to be protected? What about it? So here's the thing. How are people saying to release the Epstein files? They want release it. And this investigation to Epstein. They want all the files. They want the videos. They want the emails. They want everything about Epstein. They release the files. I just thought about it. Maybe everyone needs to be asking now about Jeffries. Does he get this? Because he has been declared incompetent now, all the evidence gets thrown out, are buried. So yes, release the files on Mike Jeffries. That's what I say. And I have to be honest, I'm going to look at the actual civil cases, because sometimes when there's a civil case, people can go through the discovery. And when they go through the discovery process, they can request information from the government or others as part of discovery and evidence. But I will say this, release the Jeffrey Epstein files, all the evidence y'all have that y'all have had for this indictment of, let me actually pull up that indictment. Where's that indictment? Release the Mike Jeffrey files. That's what I'm saying. Hold on. Eastern District of New York. Okay, the indictment's right here. Sex trafficking and prostitution business from approximately 2008 to 2015. The defendants, Michael S. Jeffries, Matthew C. Smith, and James T. Jacobson, together with others, operated an international, this goes international, people, sex trafficking and prostitution business. During this period, Jeffries and Smith relied on their vast financial resources. Jeffries' power as the CEO of Abercrombie and numerous people, including Jacobson, and a network of employees, contractors, and security professionals to run a business that was dedicated to fulfilling their sexual desires and ensuring that their international sex trafficking and prostitution business was kept secret, thereby maintaining Jeffries' powerful reputation. As part of this international sex trafficking and prostitution business, the defendants, Michael S. Jeffries and Matthew C. Smith, paid for dozens of men, including, among others, John Doe's 1 through 15, individuals whose identities are known to the grand jury, to travel within the United States and internationally to meet Jeffries and Smith in various locations, including in the New York properties, as well as in hotels such as places England, France, Italy, Morocco, and St. Bartholomew. This goes far and wide, people, for the purpose of engaging in commercial sex acts with Jeffries, Smith, and others. Some of the men traveled to and were paid to attend multiple sex events. The defendants, Michael S. Jeffries and Matthew C. Smith, through the JFO, recruited, hired, and paid an exclusive set of household staff, the staff, to facilitate and supervise the sex events. Among other things, the staff transported men to and from the sex events, arranged physical spaces for the sex events, and supervised the men who attended, including, among other things, facilitating the conduct described below. So basically, this is like a RICO as well. Interesting. Why was he charged with RICO? At the direction of the defendants, Michael S. Jeffries and Matthew Smith, the staff were present at, observed, and acted as security for, including by controlling entry and exit the sex events. The staff also provided Jeffrey Smith and the man who attended with alcohol, muscle relaxers known as poppers. So they actually drugged these people. People that are drugged cannot consent. People that are drugged cannot consent. I repeat, when you are drugged, you cannot consent. Muscle relaxants known as poppers, lubricant, Viagra, and condoms, among other items. So now he's mentally incompetent with these 15 charges of interstate prostitution and 1 count of sex trafficking. Where's the RICO charge at? As directed by Jeffries and Smith, the staff also directed men to, among other things, wear costumes, use sex toys that are prepared for particular sexual acts. Either the defendant, James Jacobson, or the staff paid the man for attending the sex events. The defendant, James Jacobson, traveled throughout the United States and internationally to recruit and interview men for the sex events during tryouts of potential candidates. Jacobson typically required that the candidates first engage in commercial sex acts with him. Following the tryout by Jacobson, the defendant, Matthew Smith, approved candidates prior to their selection for and transportation to a sex event. At the direction of Smith, Jacobson paid fees to individuals who successfully referred men who were subsequently selected. The defendants, Michael Jeffries, Matthew Smith, and Jacobson, and others acting at their direction, employed coercive, fraudulent, and deceptive tactics in connection with the recruitment, hiring, transportation, obtaining, maintaining, solicitation, and payment of the man to engage in commercial sex. For example, Jeffries, Smith, Jacobson, and others acting at their direction. Employed a referral system and interview process that failed to inform men of the details of the sex events before they attended, including the full extent and nature of their sexual activity, that will be required of the men at the sex events, including, among other things, anal intercourse, the insertion of large sex toys into their anus, and high pressure enemas administered by inserting a hose into the anus. And I don't get full into that because I already read it before. Then they have the John Does, the names, and they give the date, similar to what they was doing with Diddy as far as the escorts go, and they give the dates. So Okay, Diddy's case, of course, is full speed ahead. Jeffries' case is frozen. So I said again, Diddy is wrong. Diddy is wrong. Diddy is wrong. I'm not saying he's not, but there's a difference in how they were handled, especially at the onset before any competency was established. Black scandals become, global gossip. We have to be honest here. White scandals are sometimes buried in court filings. And where are the release the Epstein files? People are saying release the Epstein, Epstein. Release it. Now I'm saying also release the Jeffries. Don't let, he walking away, skating away, claiming mental incompetency, but at least release the evidence y'all have. Just like y'all are saying, release the Epstein, release the Mike Jeffries files, gigabytes and gigabytes upon gigabytes of information of all these charges. Don't let all of this be buried. Mike Jeffries, former CEO of Abercrombie, released his files. He's facing, of course, these federal sex trafficking charges, multiple survivors, civil lawsuits, massive evidence, but it's currently being where is it going to happen? If he's never declared competent, where is the evidence going to go? And yet, because of the competency, like I said, ruling, his trial is frozen, like Elsa froze on pause. He's at home on bond, calling into court, while the world barely notices, barely reports on him or anything going on with this guy. And the poor victims of this guy are not getting any justice. This is not justice. This is a double standard. And if we care about equality, we have to pretty much call it out. And not just about black and white, which is unfair as far as the bail and other things, how this was handled, but also how it is versus male versus female victims. That's also unfair equality. How male victims of sex crimes are not treated as fairly as females, and also as female victims. And also, yes, exactly, to make you rich versus poor too. But also with the case of two defendants almost around the same income, assets, Diddy versus Jeffries, we also have to take into consideration our factor of race, of how once someone is brought into jail or arrested, the statistics and stats actually point to there is an inequality in the criminal justice system, that Black people can have the same charge or the same circumstances as someone white. And a lot of times, if left unchecked, they can actually get tougher sentences, longer sentences, unfair bail, other things unfairly compared to someone white with the same crime. That's why it's important to have minimum sentencing or certain things where people are not are paying attention to the unfairness and inequalities. And also, another inequality, obviously, is that our unfairness, I will say, is that in society, men are considered like a bitch or weak, or they are people like they don't really, they're considered not masculine or whatever. If they come up and say, hey, I was sexually assaulted. When it's a woman, people will probably say, oh, it's a woman. Why are you complaining about a woman sexually assaulting you? And if it's a man, they will say, oh, you're gay, or why you didn't fight back. You're a man. You could defend yourself, even if they are a boy. So that's unfair treatment. So there's a lot of unfairness. And then, of course, with this white guy with privilege, this all can be covered up and buried. And people need to say, hey, where are the Mike Jeffries? So where are the Mike Jeffrey evidence and files that all remember, the Eastern District of New York filed this indictment against him, alleging to have all this evidence. So where is the evidence? Release it. I want to see the files for that. But like I said, again, I'm not saying that Diddy should be out of jail. I'm saying that Mike Jeffries, I believe, is competent, and he's competent enough, in my opinion, to stand trial and go to jail. In my opinion, he can't actually face. I don't believe that he's so incompetent and so mentally deteriorated where he cannot stand trial. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I believe that this all came about after he was indicted with 16 counts. 1 count of sex trafficking, 15 interstate prostitution, and then all of a sudden he's mentally incompetent. Yeah. Okay. But like I said, don't let Black downfall be global entertainment while white predators skate by with silence, bail, and excuses. Hold them all accountable. All criminals should be treated equally. All criminals should be treated equally. And like I said, I'm going to be following this case as well as, of course, with the Diddy case. And like I said, I'm like, what's happening with this case? Why is it also frozen? But yeah, hit that like button and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next live. But like I said, justice needs to be equal for males and females of sex crimes. And sex crimes is a problem. It's a problem in America, definitely a public health crisis. We need to get to the bottom of people committing sex crimes, not only to children, but to men and women. It's definitely a problem. A lot of people with issues, every person I be hearing a lot, not every person, but a lot of people that tell their story of their childhood or through their life. A lot of people that are harmed or they're hurting and they're like experiencing something. A lot of these people have the same story of some sort of victimization, and a lot of times it's sexual victimization, which is very much so a problem. And we have to hold everyone accountable that are guilty of these predatory sex crimes, not only to women but to men. Because remember, even with these men that are being that are out here, they're not getting justice. And then what's happened to Mike Jeffries? He gets to do all these sex events, take advantage of people, and then he gets to skate on by. He gets bail. Imagine these people are happy that he's arrested, incarcerated, and then within a short amount of time, he pays $10 million. He's out on bail. And then it's like, okay, 1 minute you felt like you were going to get some sort of justice, and then the next minute, boom, he's out. So, but yeah, let's make equal justice, even when it comes to criminals. All criminals should get the same treatment, especially for the same crime, okay? I have not checked my phone. Tiffany, so if you did send it, I have not checked it. But I definitely do. I'll give you a shout out. I appreciate the cash app. Again, shout out to Tiffany. I appreciate the cash app. Fan funding, yes, I appreciate the support. And everybody else, remember, support my channel for free just by what? Hitting that like button. Yes, make sure if you are triggered by this video, make sure you check out. Well, this is the National Human Trafficking, but there's also sexual assault hotlines as well. Hold on. Tracy says, look at all the chirpers who came out against Diddy. Maybe not as many witnesses willing to come out against Jeffries. Well, I mean, people are coming out against him. He has 15. So yeah, so in my live I pretty much said that there's 15 people. So he actually had 15 counts. And then he also has some civil lawsuits. But again, now he's declaring that he's incompetent for at least a criminal charges, but not the actual civil. He can still face civil. Jay Boopsy says, Jeffries, we are on your roll. Justice will prevail. Might not be through the system, but you will have to pay for your crimes. So I will say this. People need to actually push for the release of his files as well. The criminal investigation into Jeffries. Just because he's mentally incompetent now, well, you're allegedly saying that he's mentally incompetent now, all his dirty deeds are going to be buried. Do a video on Roblox. What about Roblox? I don't even. Tiffany says, eerily sounds like Diddy's initial case, but it's getting handled differently. And like I said, people are going to say, oh, well, it's different because he's declared mentally incompetent. Please go back and listen to my video. I'm stating my thing says, why did one get bail? Before anything was declared about mentally incompetence or mentally incompetent, there was already unfairness from the very beginning, from the moment he was arrested. There was the unfairness started. And the moment he was arrested and then subsequently got bail, etc. Okay. So that's the unfairness had already been established. So please spare me, okay? His charges definitely emulates Diddy's, but again, we know what time it is exactly. We know. At the end of the day, they take care of their own. That's what Auntie Mickey says. Jay Boosie says he works in R. Kelly, and yet he gets a slap on the ankle. And by the way, Yeah, ankle bracelet. And by the way, again, for those that don't know, all the charges against him for the indictment, check out my previous video where I actually go over the full indictment. I'm not reading it again. It's what I really say is very graphic, sexually graphic, and I have not put up any banners or anything to read anything that explicit. But pretty much, it's very disturbing behavior. Marie says, Shaw, he is trying to fire the DA because she won't charge the bike prosecutor. They won't show the files. Yeah, they're not going to release anything. They're probably going to say, oh, again, it's all about protection. People are going to be protected. And also, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. A lot of times things get covered up because other people are actually involved. Things can run deep. I believe that sometimes things run deeper than what it is, where people that have a lot of money, sometimes a lot of them be interconnected. They be connected and they know some of each other's secrets. So they just be, shh. That's what I be thinking, okay? Some people will be behind the scenes participating or doing certain things. I'm not saying like all the time, but sometimes that is the case. I scratch your back, you scratch my back kind of a thing. So true, Dani. Was a few Caucasian celeb stories were not talked about, but Diddy was headlines. Yes, him and his partner are diabolical, and it's very disgusting. And now he gets declared that he's mentally incompetent. Here's my thing. I don't think he's severe enough at this point to be declared mentally incompetent. I don't think it's that severe. It's not that severe. There are different, it's progressive, and I don't think it's at the level to where he cannot stand trial at this moment. Okay, could something happen later where it's completely, incompetent? Yes, but at this very moment, is he really 100% incompetent to where he cannot stand trial? I don't believe it. I'm sorry, I don't. There are sometimes people are, they go through trial and then later on, if things get worse, then they might get some sort of release. Or also, could it be that why can't he just go to some sort of let me see something. Can you go to some sort of mental hospital or like permanently, or how does that work? Let me Google it. I'm Googling it. Hold on. But yeah, make sure y'all smash that like button. It's just crazy, but I don't believe that he's at the point where he's completely crazy, or insane or incompetent, should I say, to stand trial. Okay, if a federal judge finds a defendant incompetent, the court must follow specific steps: temporary hospitalization for evaluation and treatment to try to restore competency, possible extensions if restoration looks possible, and in narrow circumstances, a separate civil commitment path if the person is both mentally ill and dangerous. There are several possible outcomes, and whether someone ends up in a hospital long term depends on medical findings, legal hearings, and statutory rules, not just the defendant's wish. If the person remains mentally ill and poses a substantial risk of bodily harm to others, if released, the court can hold a hearing and on clear and convincing evidence, commit the person to the custody of the Attorney General for hospitalization or confinement under civil commitment standards. That's for dangerousness, not a get out of jail free option. If neither restoration nor civil commitment fits, prosecutors and courts choose other routes. Prosecutors prosecutors might dismiss charges voluntarily, sometimes without prejudice, or the case stays on pause while treatment continues or until competency changes. But here they're saying that he's permanently disabled. It says a permanent finding of incompetency does not automatically mean permanent hospitalization. It triggers procedures and hearings to decide next steps. The speedy trial clock is excluded during incompetency periods. It says civil cases by survivors can continue even when criminal proceedings are paused. Importantly, civil lawsuits are a separate track. I already discussed that. Typical outcomes. If restoration succeeds, which they're saying it won't, the person returns to court and trial proceeds, of course. And if restoration fails, that they cannot restore him to competency, but they find him to be dangerous, there could be a civil commitment, and defendant can be committed to attorney general custody for treatment and hospitalization. And that's not the same as free to live in a mental hospital forever. It's a confinement decision based on risk and legal hearings. And if the restoration fails, but that he's not considered dangerous, prosecutors may dismiss charges or keep the case on indefinite pause. Civil suits can still go forward. But yeah, again, Diddy is, of course, behind bars, waiting sentencing on October 3rd. And the other, Mike Jeffries, with similar charges, is stuck in limbo. And we are waiting for December to see what's going to happen with him next. But yeah, that's about it, y'all. We'll see y'all in the next live. Have a great rest of your day. Bye. And yes, he should be considered dangerous. So will he be considered dangerous? We will see. He should be considered dangerous based on his charges. I mean, Diddy was considered dangerous, so I mean, he should be considered dangerous, but we will see. We will see. Time will tell.
I gotta go. I gotta go. Don't ask me why. I gotta go. I should have left a long time ago. I don't even know how I got here, but I gotta go. Things have to change. I can't stay this way anymore. Change is a good thing for me. I'm tired of the same old thing. So I'm trying something new, exploring something new. I'm not afraid of starting over today. It's a new day, a new me is coming. You'll see, I see it, I believe it's gonna do it. You'll see, I gotta go, don't ask me why. I gotta go, I should've left a long time ago. I don't even know how I got here, but I gotta go. I want more than this, I want more than this. I deserve whatever I want, my heart's desire. I want more than this. What is this? This isn't it. What is this? This isn't how it's supposed to be. This isn't how my life's supposed to be.